Howdy folks, and thanks for joining me today out here in the garden here at Cedar Creek Homestead. I'm Howie, and I want to welcome you to our channel today and another garden update. And it's gotten hot. I just got through tilling up the garden, and it is warm early this morning. Man, the sun's up, no clouds, and it has started heating up. We've been in the 90s and high humidity. I think yesterday the high was 93, so it's starting to warm up here at the homestead, and it makes it a little bit harder to take care of your garden. This ain't my first rodeo, so I've been through this, but I wanted to share with you a few things today on how to stay cool in the gardening time, and also when you're out having to work in this, some tips about things that might help you, and also some weeding tips. But first, before I do that, I'll take you on a little tour here of the garden, show you the updates. We've got some actually going to pick some produce out of the garden today, so I'll show you a little update on that, and then we'll return back and talk about some tips here. Anyway, it's going to start off first with the cucumbers. Some reason I just kind of do that every time, but they're coming along, and this one down here has actually got blooms on it, so it won't be long till we'll have some baby cukes. Probably within a week we should have some cucumbers to munch on. I did have to soaker hose this. Last night I turned the hose on to get started here, and last year I hardly had to water at all, but boy, this year I think it's going to be a different year, and I'm glad I had the soaker hose already ran. But there's another little few blooms. We'll have some little cukes coming on here, so it won't be long we'll have more cucumbers than we know what to do with. And there's the beets. Josie loves to eat beets, and they're really thick and coming on, and trying to keep the grass and weeds out of them is kind of a challenge at first, but I've got took the tiller and tilled up as close. I went down through and hoed them out and pulled what I could pull. Same thing with the turnips here. Got plenty of greens for eating, but I'll have way more turnips too if everything goes well. They have really taken off, but someone had asked me about the turnips eating the greens, would it hurt them? Well, one thing is you really need to thin, and so if you pull a few up by the roots that you can kind of tell the ones that's really making bulbs and ones that ain't, then you can trim off the leaves and eat those, and that would actually help your plants out. These need a good thinning, but they're looking good. And here's our peppers, and they're blooming. These are bell peppers. Some of them's Big Bertha bell peppers. Over here's the latest green beans. We ran out of green beans and canned ones, so we're trying to grow extra. So I got these 2 rows established here, then a row of purple whole peas, and those green beans over there, the tallest row, was the first ones I planted, and they have really done well. They're blooming, so it won't be long. Josie will have to get the canner out and start canning. I usually get a couple of really good pickings off of them. This is a cantaloupe here that I planted. I had some old seeds in the freezer, and I wanted to plant some, so I thought I'd just try, and that's a little watermelon. If I don't have them mixed up, I may be telling you the opposite. I'll know when the fruit shows up. There's a big old mosquito. And then here's a couple of little squashes that I planted late. They're not doing much, but this squash here, black zucchini, it's got some fruit on it, and all of these are blooming, and It's one thing with these squash, they make some of the prettiest blooms. But right in here, I'm gonna get my first squash of the season. This here, it is a big one. It ought to make me and Josie a good mess for me and her, but it is loaded down with little squashes. But my plant, these leaves were looking kind of wilty like out here. So I started it in a coffee can, and I took the bottom of the coffee can off, but I think it wasn't getting enough food, so I put some of that Dr. Earth's in the can and watered it good, and then I've been watering them. But anyway, it has come out of it, but it's still going to lose a few of its leaves. Anyway, it's going to have a lot of fruit. I'm going to take this one in. I laid it down in the dirt there, but take this into Josie. And that yellow squash there, it's got some little ones in it there. It had some rot down here. You'll get some every once in a while, the low ones that'll rot off. But there's going to be a pretty little squash. And stuff's looking good. Now, people down south, I ain't got nothing on y'all for sure. If you're up north, some of you trying to keep the grass out of my okra here, and I till up close to it there, but till it gets a little bit taller, but it don't take much to keep the grass out of it. But the okra's coming on, and it should be blooming here pretty soon. The tomatoes are all down through there. These first few right here are actually peppers, these first four, and then all the tomatoes. And I think all of them, when I was watering last night, have tomatoes on them. And one problem I'm having, this stuff's growing so quick, is keeping them inside the cages. They want to grow outside, and that's kind of a challenge. But that one there's got a pretty good sized little tomato, and but it's trying to grow outside too. Anyway, I have to go through here and pull these in every once in a while. But anyway, the tomatoes are doing good. I got to get my cages on these this week, and I wanted to till down through here and take my hoe and hoe around these 2 rows over here before I put the cages. I showed you last week I already had the cages on this row, but this was my first row to plant, and you can see the difference. And this always, though, is my best row, even if you don't plant it first. There's something about the soil here, and I actually think because these trees here partly shade this in the early morning hours, and that it helps keep it a little bit cooler. It'll make the most tomatoes. I got better boys planted down this row here, and all of them's got tomatoes, and I think it helps them do good in the sun as it comes on around. Right now it's kind of hid there, but it'll come around and it'll get direct sun big part of the day. And then in the evening I've got trees back this other way, so I think that helps it. But anyway, I got to get these cages on these pretty quick, like, because if I don't get them on there, they will get too big. And if they get too big on you, then your tomatoes, they'll just fall. These will just droop on the ground. There's an old boy over here that grows tomatoes and sells them. That's a truck patch type deal, and he don't put nothing around his. He just has them laid out all over the place, and he gets a ton of tomatoes and sells them. And there's no telling how much that old guy's retired, but people come way out in the country to buy tomatoes from him. But anyway, that's a look at the garden today, and some of you, I hope, have gotten to plant finally. I keep getting word from some of you up north that you're having, just getting to plant stuff. So I hope you got your stuff in the ground and everything will go well for you. And it's going to be a hot day today. One of the tips I have here in regarding to the garden was staying cool. And one thing, which is a no-brainer, is get out early before it gets too hot. Now, I got out early this morning, but it got hot in a hurry, and it does. You know, there'll be mornings here in Oklahoma where, I mean, as soon as you get up in the mornings, it's just hot. And I don't know what to tell you about those particular days. We do have these little cloths that you can put in water, and you put around your neck. They sell them at Walmart. Those really help. I can handle the heat. Once I get sweaty stuff, it's not too bad. It's that initial period of getting hot and sweaty that's rough. Some people don't want to get hot and sweaty because it just messes them up. But I clean up easy. I'll go in after a while and take a shower. One thing is, if you get up early, and the way our garden's positioned, in the morning for a while, this is shaded here. And you can probably see back over here, hopefully, where the tomatoes are, it's still partly shaded. So in the early spring, we have a big pecan tree right behind here. And when the east sun comes up, that takes them pecan trees a while before they get leaves. So we get lots of sun on the garden. But on up in the summer, that tree will start shading. Now, right now, it's not doing anything, but here after a while, there'll be a period that we'll go through that it'll actually put shade pretty much over the whole garden, which helps keep it cool from, because your tomatoes and stuff, if they get too much heat, even everything, if it gets too much heat, so it kind of helps. But then the sun, as it comes on around and heads to the west, there'll be a period that it'll get sunlight back, and in the evenings, as it gets the hottest part of the year, which say July, August, September, about 6 o'clock, this starts getting shaded again, and where other parts of our place don't, and that helps. So what I try to do is figure out when my garden's shaded the best and come out and work in the garden at that time. Another thing is to work little bits, little pieces at a time. You know, don't come out on one day and think you're going to work all day and get your garden done when it's hot like this. Now, when it's cooler weather like we had the other day, I could come out here and work all day and no problem. But usually I don't need to work the entire day. I can usually, you know, if I work an hour or two here, like in the mornings before I go to work, I'll come out here and work a little while. We have an old cement slab over here where used to be the old wash house for our old home place here where I was raised. And that's all cleaned off, and me and Josie, we're talking about getting us some lawn furniture, and then getting us one of them carafes of stainless steel little carafes for coffee, and bring out here and set and have coffee on that slab in the mornings, have our first cup, and then we'd already be right out here and we could get started working in the garden and visit at the same time. And we've been going to do that, but I never have cleaned that slab off. But I got it cleaned off this year, and we had to get us some lawn furniture for it, something. She's got her eye on a couple of things she's wanting us to get, and that would be good video, and too, where we could sit over there and video. But anyway, but getting out early and doing little bits and pieces, but don't get out and get yourself sick. You know, it's not worth it. But if you'll stay at it, and what I like to do is come out in the mornings and every morning do one little project while it's cool. Now, it's already getting kind of hot now. Of course, I've been out tilling the garden, and it was hot when I started tilling this morning, even in the shade. But now I've gotten sweaty and everything, and you start cooling off, and there's a little bit of breeze starting to blow. I don't know if you can pick it up in the microphone or not, but anyway, but I'll do, like I'll say, I'll do this whole row right here. And now last night I watered the garden. And another problem we have is mosquitoes. And I had even sprayed, and still I sprayed with off on my shirt and stuff. And it's still, them things was just eating me up. And I hurried and watered my tomatoes the first time I've had to water this year on them, but that's another problem towards dark. So early in the morning here, the mosquitoes don't seem to bother us, and you can get out and work, but late in the evening, I like to water in the evening. A lot of people like to water in the morning, but it seems like I've had better success to water my stuff in the evening after the sun starts going down. And actually last night I did it in the dark. I've got a night light here, a pole light thing that it lights up the garden, so I was out here watering, but the mosquitoes were so thick, so and just eating me alive. Anyway, another thing I want to talk about today, besides staying cool, was keeping your weeds down. Now, we do a traditional garden here, and a traditional garden is what I call, around here as I was growing up, everybody tilled their gardens up. There was a few people, an old man named Mr. Tarpley here in town, who he spaded his garden up, and you just take a shovel. He didn't have a very big garden. It'd be hard to spade this whole garden up, but he would do it in the fall so it would help kill some of the bugs, and then he would do it again in the springtime. And he'd oftentimes hire me to do to spade up his garden. But anyway, so around here, more traditional is that you have an old tiller and you keep it broke up and you go through it once a week, or however often you need to. Now, it's been 2 weeks since I've tilled the garden, and it was doing pretty good, but it was starting to get grass. Now I've tilled it. I'll probably have to till it again in another week, next weekend, but or a few days from now. But nonetheless, what'll happen is it'll get to where I don't need to till it every week. If I till it, it'll just be dust coming up because the grass won't be a problem. Now, if we get a rain, it's something like a little rain will just make everything, all the seeds start coming up. Of course, as you've tilled it, the seeds are up on top, so it's easy to kill them out. But just for some reason, after you get a little rain, but now that it's turned dry here, last year I very seldom watered the garden. This year it's already turning off. We had rain every week, a ½ inch to an inch, and sometimes 4 or 5 inches a week until last week. And it's been over a week and we haven't gotten but just a trace of rain. So we may be headed into kind of a drought period here, which is kind of good for the weeds and grass because it'll kind of kill them out. But one thing I do to manage my weeds here besides tilling, you can put grow down ground cloth. If you don't have a big garden like this, maybe you're doing raised beds, you can just mulch or something like that. You can mulch in a big garden like this. You can do all different ways. You can do back to Eden gardening, but I do this because it's traditional. It's what I grew up with, but just because I do it don't mean it'll work for you. And also, we are in changing times with our weather patterns, climate and all that, and rain and moisture. We're between extreme rain or no rain, so there are different times, so you have to adapt to that. But I'm still able to grow a pretty good garden here, doing it what I call the old-fashioned traditional way. One way that I keep grass down up against these beans, like this tall green beans, is and these will be tall like them. They're just not been planted as long. Actually, this is purple whole peas here. Those are beans in those 2 rows. But on my tiller, it's a rear tine Cub Cadet tiller, and it has these little plates that you can raise up and down, and it deflects the dirt. I've got mine raised just a little, so when I come down through here, I want it to deflect the dirt up against the plants. Now, when they're little, you don't want to do this, or you bury them. And that's another thing, depends on where you are. We used to be in Arkansas, and we had rocks in our garden. It would grow stuff like crazy, but we had tons of little rocks. And somebody told me, my dad did one time, said, "Son, why don't you get all them rocks out of the garden?" Well, if I would have, I'd have had a big crater in the ground. So I couldn't do that, but I did get a bunch of them out, the bigger rocks. But as you were tilling along, if you happen to hit a bigger rock, that tiller would jerk and go, and you might wipe out 4 or 5 foot section of beans or tomatoes or something. So you might not work in your area, but what works here, because the only rocks that are here are rocks we have brought in, and this is more of a sandy, loomy type soil. It tills up real well, but I'll get up close to the plants and throw that loose dirt up against them, and that helps, actually kind of helps windrow up. And now once you get green beans, these are just blooming, but once they get beans on them, if you do that, you will throw dirt on your beans and some of them will rot. So you got to watch that part. But right now, since there's no beans on there, I can throw that. And these plants will shade out the undergrowth and they'll stay pretty much weed free. Down through here where these black-eyed peas are, purple hulls, there are a few spots that are kind of bare, and so I'll have to take the garden hoe, and I've already done it once this year, and I'll go down this other row of green beans. It didn't come up quite as thick as this, but they're still young, so they'll bush out more. I'll need to go down through there and clean it too some. But I've gotten the dirt, you know, the plants are going this way, and I've got the dirt on both sides kind of windrowed up, not too high up, so you got to kind of figure it out, but you'll figure out what the happy medium is between too much and not enough, but it'll actually smother out the stuff usually. And you may have a weed here and there come through, but you can easily go down through and get these, and it sure helps with beans, the okra, stuff like that, to keep them clean, because I want to do the least amount of weeding and stuff like that as I can. But anyway, I appreciate you watching today. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. If you're not a subscriber, we ask that you'd subscribe to our channel. Would really help us out, and let us know how you're going. Some of you that have channels are doing really well, and already eating beans and tomatoes and stuff. Danny and Wanda down at Deep South Homestead, you know, they're get early start on us in their greenhouse and stuff, but man, have they got the tomatoes and stuff, and just looking beautiful down there in their neck of the woods. And I know some of the others have sent us videos or sent us links saying check out your channels, and I have, and I tell you what, I'm having trouble getting it all done right now, but it's really taken a while to get all the stuff checked out and done. But when I do, and I'm trying to read all the comments and stuff, but I really enjoy it. So anyway, we appreciate you watching today. When you hit that subscribe button on the way out, there's a little bell will pop up. If you click that bell, you'll be notified when we upload videos. And also give us a thumbs up and comment. All those sure help us out, and we certainly appreciate you watching today. May God richly bless you, and we'll see you next time. We're gone.